behavior. All right, good morning, everyone. For those of you online, thanks for joining us. Have a very packed agenda with lots of great speakers and guests today. So let's go ahead and get started without wasting any more minutes. Do we need to do a roll call? Probably, right? Make sure we have quorum. So Anna, can you run the?
Sure. Yes. And the people online hear me okay for the roll call?
Yep, they can.
Amy Augustine. Bruce Crane.
Here.
Bruce Crane present. Steve Fensky. Gail Hedstrom. Brian Hood.
Here.
Adam Hutchins.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Mark Johnson present. Daniel Lightfoot.
Here.
Paul McDonald. Brianna Brody.
I'm here.
And I'm present. Phil Solberger. Josh Wolf. And Melissa Wolf.
Here.
Melissa Wolf present.
All right. Thank you, Anna. Yep, we have quorum. So we can go ahead and get started. I'm sure others will join as we go forward. So a quick agenda for today. Dave will do the approval of the minutes here in a second. Dave will give us an update on Gardnerville Co-op Telephone Association. We'll have a discussion with Senator Putnam, which we're really grateful that he's here with us today. And then we'll get into, we kind of switch the agenda up a little bit. We'll get into subgroup updates first, just the discussions you've had since the last meeting, maybe some of the challenges you may have uncovered, some of the recommendations that might be going forward, or you might be thinking about bringing forward. So as we start to create the report for the end of the year. And then we have two presentations after that. PCs for People will be first. We'll take a quick break, and then HealthMed, who's here with us today, will give the other presentation. That should take us right around noon or lunchtime, and then we will go to the updates from the Office of Broadband Development, and any it's on BEAD as well, and conclude with any other business. So that's our agenda for today, which would also conclude with a tour of the Gardnerville Cooperative Association, which Dave was kindly offer that to the group here for those who are able to stay a little bit longer. So with that, first agenda item is to approve the minutes. Those were sent out with the meeting invite as well as an email. Hopefully you had a chance to review those. Any questions, comments, or concerns with the meeting minutes from our meeting in August? Hearing no comments or concerns, we'll take the silence as approval for the minutes. So they've been approved, and we will get those published. And now I'll turn it over to Dave for an intro of Gardnerville Cooperative Telephone Association. Thank you for having us, first of all, and about the business.
Right. First off, welcome to Gardnerville. CEO of Gardnerville was formed back in 1943, as you can see behind me. Our history panels. The original cooperators had to wait till World War II ended before material could be sourced for construction for the farmer lines that were laying all over around here. The LATA line for US West and, Ma Bell, this cooperative boundaries made it really interesting when the railroads came through, the toll gates came through. Brandon was one of the stop points, and the operators actually sat in Garfield. And the cord boards for Seattle to New York traffic, so it's kind of interesting. We're actually several companies. We run a co-op creamery, which makes world famous Millerville butter. This particular batch was sourced with lemon cream.
Everybody's in it, yeah.
And everybody gets a pound when they leave. We also have some wireless ventures. One of them is located in South Dakota. Moorhead's, St. Cloud, and across Wisconsin was one that we'd actually just sold. We're a member of several telco consortiums as well. And today, through a consortium, this particular building, which is actually a data center with an office building built around it, routes internet traffic from homes as far away as Langdon, North Dakota, which is closer to Minot, Grand Forks, past Erskine, Minnesota, northeast South Dakota, like Roberts County, that area, that traffic comes through here. Red River Valley, over to Morris, back up to Long Prairie, and a little bit in St. Cloud. It's a caching site for applications like Netflix, Google, Microsoft. This building also has multiple peering locations as far away as Seattle. As many of you know, maybe you don't know, but Google last month, and now our Google traffic heads to Seattle directly. Of course, the 511 building in Minneapolis is where probably 80% of the traffic routes today, which is right next to the Bank Stadium. The neat thing now is almost 70% of our internet traffic consumed by subscribers in that large geographical area doesn't even need to leave this building. There's that much cached or stored here. It's like jukeboxes. boxes. If you're playing a YouTube video, it's actually coming out of an appliance in a building like this now. Less than 30% of our traffic today actually transits the internet. Pretty wild. I could talk your ears off on how cool that is. One negative with being that cool, though, is the cyber attacks. They're targeting specific people or assets right now with incredible precision. Like right now, this building probably has maybe 1,500 simultaneous attacks happening right this second. Kind of wild. Something I've been involved in internet delivery since 1991-ish, and I've never seen what I'm seeing right now. It's just wild. Challenges, which was part of the talk today, was to talk about supply chain disruption, other challenges. Today, we have some relief in the challenge area. I'd expect about a 30-day lead time on cable sizes that we typically use. We're a fiber broadband internet provider, so that cable is very important to our operation. Duct is similar too. That's the plastic pipe that we put in the ground. Vaults, boxes underground, they're a little bit harder to get right now. But something like a hurricane or a strike can disrupt our supply chain immediately. We carry about 10 times the investment in inventory now than we used to carry. We're quoting about 1.6 million in inventory for cable construction all the time, where it used to be about 160,000. So it's very painful for a little company like ours. 1.25 inch or inch and a quarter duct is about 28 cents today. If a hurricane rolls into Louisiana, it's 56 cents the next day. So quick it changes. So you have to carry that if you're going to be ahead of the fluctuating price. 144 strand fiber is about $1.03. Pre-COVID, it would have been about 89 cents. Got almost as high as $2 during COVID. You can imagine the logistics there. Pedestals is little green boxes in the road ditch, about $32 today during COVID. And they'll go back up. So some things can double in 45 days. Some things can drop pricing in the same period. We constructed about 2.2 million feet of cable over the last season, fiber optic cable. We average about 700,000 feet a year in fiber construction around our area, which we're a very small company. That adds up pretty quick, especially if you look at so material pricing is pretty moderate right now, but once bead dollars hit, it's going to skyrocket. We'll see about a 20% increase really quickly. And then availability. Aside from material, we have to be ahead of R4Cs, which includes their consulting engineering. So you have to have consultants and engineers tied up, construction crews with heavy equipment. I'm going to show you some heavy equipment today that's out in our lawn out here. There's a quad track plow and 2 drills. If you ordered any of those 3 things today, if you placed an order today, you'd get it in 2 years. Like late fall 2026 is when you take delivery. So you have to be way ahead. Those machines are brand new. So they were bought about 2021-ish. They are not ours. They're our our construction crews come out of St. Cloud area, Clearwater area. So they'll be showing that. Those machines are about 250,000 bucks, 275, somewhere in there. But the support equipment for that equipment is another $600,000 or $700,000. Every time you see a crew out, there's $1 to $2 million equipment. Kind of neat. Central office core equipment, optics. That's the other area that we have to always order our routers ahead. They can take 6 to 8 months to get. Capital, our latest loan package, which we're actually just wrapping up, took 10 months to get in place. During COVID, it took 7 months. Prior to COVID, it took about 3 months. And we have a decent balance sheet. It's just hard to get capital. Weather has been cooperating. We get about 5 to 7 months of construction season in Minnesota. This has actually been a decent season. Last winter was very mild too. And our fiber network can operate at about 10 gigabits per second to a location, or 5 to 8 gig to a house. Our wireless network, like in St. Cloud, can run 300 by 300 megabit. That's Wade Park today. Again, out in our lawn, we have the quad track 2 drills, and we also have a cow or a cell on wheels. That thing that looks like a cow out there, we can roll it out and repeat wireless signals in areas like fairs, or if there's a tornado, or if there was some sort of a public need, we can roll that thing really good. That was all over the place during COVID, bringing internet out so people could download school information. And then IRV is out there too. That's Minnesota Telecom Alliance's emergency response vehicle, that camper. We store it here because we're centrally located. 46 telcos and MTA can use that during a disaster. I know it was deployed even for a cyber incident too. So we can take a peek at that too. So again, everything we do here requires a trained workforce. We have employees from multiple companies in this particular building. So we can have anywhere from 30 to 50 people here, depending on the day of the week, the season. Maybe another 20 to 50 people will be out doing construction supplies. So there's a lot of people coming in and going out of here. And we've been blessed to have several tech colleges in the area that have produced almost all of our employees. Alexandria Technical Community College is just down the road. Partnerships with those colleges have provided a tremendous resource. I know our wireless techs, a lot of them came out of Ridgewater. Telco techs came out of Medina. So earlier this year, we hosted our first esports tournament. We just tried to hire kids out of that. That's pretty good. People here playing esports. And my why for being on this task force, it's been amazing. The networking has been tremendous. But I wanted to get a voice out to this group about the challenges with deploying broadband in rural Minnesota. It takes more than cash. It takes more than grants. It takes people, and it takes collaboration, public-private partnerships. It's been tremendous, and it's been a great resource for us too. We couldn't have done what we're doing without Bree's group. Couldn't have done it. Without it, there would be nothing. That's the true story. So it's been a blessing to be part of that heritage that we're actually crafting right now. Butter, we can pivot into that just for a moment.
Yeah.
So broadband, daycare, wireless, butter makes no sense. Isn't that awesome though? That's rural Minnesota. Teddy and I were just sitting here talking about butter. That butter has been churned the same way since 1946. The churn that came in 1946 is metal. The one before it was wood, so they made us get rid of that. But that butter, it's famous. It's a premium butter. It's 84% fat. Has 3 ingredients. It has cream, salt, and flavor.
Yeah.
It's still hand wrapped, hand boxed. WCCO came out and did a story about it. It's in 58 grocery stores. It's made right here. And it's cooled with well water. And it's made the exact same way it was made post World War II. It's just a cool heritage thing that makes living in rural Minnesota special. So thank you for being here today. I'll pause for questions. Make sure you grab your phone when you leave.
Any questions for Dave?
I couldn't have done that well.
This is great. Are there any, I know you said this building has a data center in it. Are there any other large data centers you have to support in the area?
So this building has a sister data center in Abercrombie, North Dakota.
Okay.
So this building gets nailed, and
That building will take over. Got it.
but nothing larger than.
So the Microsofts, Google, Amazons, they haven't quite built any large data centers here yet. Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, the appliances are so small now.
Yeah. Okay.
How long have we had the data center? How long has that been? You might decide when it's that.
The data center that started connecting other telcos got built in 2008 and it was in production in 2000. And if we were absent from power, we have N+2 power in here, but we lost all power. We run about 6-7 hours before things will start getting shut in. Not saying that to any hackers. There's a lot of power to that.
Any questions online for? Oh, there's one here. Yeah.
Just how many people's traffic transits through here?
Well, we go on homes, and there's probably 70,000. I haven't done a count since 50,000, but I know we've been adding the number. There's 2 other areas coming in now. And it's crazy because it's in Brandon, Minnesota, right? A town of 400. But electrically, it makes sense if you're looking at a map. It's how the internet works. That's what's cool. I think all the young people and the older people, I'm the old one here. Think how cool it is for them to come through school and stay right here and work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for all being here.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that overview. That was great, and definitely give you some insight into some of the work that's happening here. Okay, so moving on, I want to introduce Senator Putnam. He is the chair of the Agriculture, Broadband, and Rural Development Committee, and we had a conversation earlier this year, I think, right? And one of the things you expressed was the willingness to come to a broadband meeting, and particularly we did one in rural Minnesota. So we organized one just for that. No, I'm just kidding. We were going to do this, and we thought this was a great opportunity for you to participate with us, to hear some of the conversation and Dave kind of alluded to some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and why everybody is excited to be here. But we're really glad to have you here. Thank you for making the time to be here this morning. Really, really appreciate that. But just want to turn it over to you for a few words for the task force, and then from there, I'm sure there'll be some questions and discussions we can have afterwards.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, thanks everybody for having me here, and thanks, Dave, for that warm welcome and introduction, and butter. I'm really grateful to get a chance to hang out with you guys, to visit, and to learn a little bit more. I will say that I've been having some thoughts in my own head about approaches towards broadband next session. And one of the things that's going to be very important to me, that I've already discussed with leadership in both bodies, is that the jurisdiction of broadband be respected better than it has been in the past, so that when there are issues that are broadband-centric or specific to broadband, that they take a trip through my committee. That's going to be something that I've already established with great certainty with leadership in both bodies, because those of you who were around last session knew that that wasn't the case. But it will be going forward. I've had assurances from people that that jurisdiction will be respected a little bit more than it has been in the past. And part of that also, in all candor, has to do with my novelty in this position. I'm not a career politician. I've only been in office for 30 years. I've been chair for the last 2. So I'm still learning how to do that. One of the things that I'm going to, as I suggested earlier, that I'm going to be very serious about, and already have been, is that making sure that broadband stuff is being talked about with broadband people. People who are actually on the ground, who know about the complexities of this industry and the dynamism and expenses, which is something I still had never heard until Dave just shared it with us. In terms of supply chain expenses, that must be incredibly difficult to navigate. That's something that people in St. Paul who are making decisions about broadband don't know anything about. And it's our job to make sure that your voice gets heard, so that we understand the complexities of your industry when we're making decisions to shape how you do it. So my commitment is to make sure that we do that a little bit better in that committee. Something else I wanted to communicate to you all is that there are issues and concerns that are adjacent to the broadband jurisdiction that still have have the implications for how you do your job and what you do. One of those, as Dave sort of was suggesting, is probably workforce development. That's an issue that's really important to every industry, but it's probably especially important to yours, especially given broadband's role in our larger economy. So I wanted to communicate to all of you here today that if there are concerns that you have that are adjacent to broadband but not specific to my jurisdiction, I want to offer myself as a resource for those things. So I'm the vice chair of the Higher Education Committee. Last session, we put some resources into workforce development in the Minnesota state system for specific careers. And one of those, I believe, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure we put broadband in there. There might be other things that could be useful in terms of encouraging people to go into this industry or facilitating their capacity to get the education, the training that they need to do it. And those might travel through higher education. If that's something that's interesting to you, I can use the authority of my chair position in the Broadband Committee to forward those interests. Similarly, I'm also on the Jobs and Economic Development Committee. Another area where I'd like to check the concerns that you've got. And lastly, I'm also on the Taxes Committee, which is unfortunate for me and anyone else. So if you have needs that you have for taxes, don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. No, I'm kidding. Actually, that's another opportunity where if I can help, I'd love to. So that's primarily my reason to be here today, is to see you all, to say hi, to learn a little bit. Unfortunately, as I think I mentioned today, I do have to leave a little bit early. I really love Thursday. I got a big in St. Cloud.
Yeah, no problem.
Actually, Senator Champion is up. I have to host him, or he'll get lost. So maybe St. Cloud.
Yeah.
But those are the two things I wanted to communicate with you guys straight off the bat. Is that one, I will be much more diligent about policing the boundaries of the broadband jurisdiction. Secondly, outside of that jurisdiction, I want to help however I can.
We really appreciate that. And one of the things you have our commitment as well is, so as a group, typically you'll see in a second, we'll hear from different constituents and different parties that need to take advantage of broadband in some shape or form or see challenges with it. And ultimately, we will put together what we see as this is a problem and here's a potential solution for it. And we come up with a report at the end of the year. We'd love to be able to review that with you kind of once the report is done, and we could do that in St. Paul or somewhere where it's, we don't have to travel too far. But then you get the sense of like, here's some of the things we talked about. You get all the issues front and center. We can get access to some of the experts that kind of brought those things forward, and then maybe some of the solutions. Not to say it is the solution, but some suggestions that might be there. And I think that might be helpful as we get into legislative sessions and from there. So
that'd be great, Tony. If I could ask a favor, perhaps. That,
yep.
I don't know how frequently this group convenes, but if we could meet again before session begins.
Yes.
Maybe just a smaller group of you just to talk about these kinds of things. As I think, well, as Samantha knows, my day job, so I still teach at St. John's. So my schedule is a little bit complicated, but maybe sometime in December we can meet and catch up on things before session begins.
I think that's a great suggestion. We'll absolutely do that. So we'll find time. We usually meet once a month, but we can actually have special meetings and even to your point of a small group, that we can pull off anytime. So we'll absolutely do that. Questions for Senator Putnam? Task Force members? Comments? It's not a shy group, I know.
Something hard.
There's Daniel has a question. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hey, Senator. Good morning. Daniel Life with League Minnesota Cities. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Just want to say, appreciate your leadership this past session on all things broadband. I mean, I think there were some pretty, high octane conversations and some high profile policy issues that I think you navigated really well, and you engaged all stakeholders. And I think that was just a really great model for how this task force has conversations about broadband policy. When you say that the Ag Committee will have jurisdiction over broadband, do you mean that the committee will also have policy and funding, so all things broadband? Or is Commerce still going to have some of the telecom-related policy stuff?
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks for the praise, too. I appreciate it. If the word broadband is in the bill, I want to hear it.
Perfect.
So, you're right, a lot of the stuff will go through Commerce. I think the large finance components will be articulated to my committee again, as they were last time. But again, as you know, and everyone in the room knows, I have no idea what that's going to look like.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that question, Daniel. Other questions or comments?
If I could.
Go ahead, Brianna.
Yes, hi, Senator. I just also wanted to extend gratitude for the work from last session and certainly ahead of going into this next session as well. We appreciate the partnership. We're grateful for your time and certainly look forward to engaging in further conversation in regards to our annual report. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that too. You guys are being too nice. Give me something hard. Make me work.
Bree, go ahead.
Bree's like, okay.
Bree's like, oh.
Okay, so often, I mean, in previous roles and careers, what is most helpful for you to do your job? Obviously, you're having this conversation, but what can we continue to provide that allows you the opportunity to really represent not only industries, but the people we often that want to serve?
You know, I think that this is not endemic to this industry in particular, but just how we do politics. What I think our necessities are frequent communication, patience, and candor. Those are the three things that are most important in politics. I did a talk to a bunch of students at the Carlson School a week or two ago about how to advocate at the Capitol. And the first thing I said was, don't be afraid to acknowledge the limitations of your own perspective.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, Tori, how's it going, man? All right, never mind.
I figured
So,
now it's muted.
I'm saying that's sort of like a frequent conversation, but also knowledge that my powers are limited, as they should be as a legislator. I'm not an executive. I don't have a magic wand. I don't have the governor's checkbook. Know all those things. Know also that I'm as earnest as it gets, perhaps too much on occasion. So have some patience with me too, if you would. But also deal with, I think, at least with me personally, my inclination is I like it when people say, look, I think this is a really good idea. This is the way it's good. This is the way it's bad. This is who's going to be bothered by this. This is who's going to be happy about it. Because that scope of information allows me to advocate better on your behalf. And this is a problem that I have with some of my colleagues. Not Tori, obviously, but the problem I have with some of my colleagues is that you do your job better when you know what you're talking about. And they say that a lot of legislators are a mile wide and an inch deep. I think sometimes we overestimate that inch. So for me, perhaps this is a part of my being a scholar too, but I really want to know what I'm talking about to the best extent that I can. And that includes knowing the limitations of a perspective or problems or complications that I might not be aware of.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I'm great to hear kind of taking the bull by the horns and then bringing it all together. I love to hear that. What are you hearing from your colleagues? Is there, because we have the worry, right, that people go, oh, we're done, we're taking care of it. Be fine, we've got some things coming, it's all done. What are you hearing from your colleagues in that sense?
One of the strange things about broadband as an area of policy that I've noticed in the last couple of months, last year or two, is that we really just want to write the check and not have to think about it. And then we want to celebrate the fact that we wrote the check. That seems to be the approach the legislature takes to issues of broadband. We don't really talk about it very much. Everyone just says it's important and then is content with having written the check. I think that we have a responsibility and opportunity to get a little bit dirty in the details and to actually talk a little bit more about some of these other policies. As some of you know, and still perhaps have scars to prove, we had a conversation about labor and broadband last session. I think that one of the challenges we had with that conversation is that the relationships hadn't been built to have a better conversation already. We hadn't done the deeper work, and it felt like people were like, oh, wait a minute. Broadband needs workers? I thought we just had to write a check. And I think that a lot of my colleagues kind of approached it that way. And part of that has to do with the feeling that this is a new concern, although you all know that it's not. The other part has to do with, I think, what we're getting at here, is that sometimes it's one of those things that maybe seems too complicated or seems too complex, so that we want to feel better about ourselves by just writing check and not thinking about it, instead of thinking about it. And I want to have more conversations like doing. If you look at the hearing schedule in the Ag and Broadband Committee this last session, we didn't really talk about broadband a whole lot. I would like to fix that, even if it means we're running down very specific policies. But in terms of what I'm hearing at the Capitol, I haven't heard a lot about what's coming down the pike yet, but it's still fairly early that day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions or comments? Yep, go ahead.
Senator, do you have a perspective on I think the number is approximately 8% that either served or underserved, a lot of this funding is going to, finish that connection between those individuals and businesses and those most at risk and most vulnerable. Do you see a high correlation there?
I do, and I think that, again, I feel like I'm sounding quite critical of, say, all of my colleagues, but I think that we don't have a fully fleshed out understanding of the nature of equity when it comes to things like digital access. There is, I think, a pretty clear connection between opportunity and broadband access, and that's what equity is supposed to be all about. One of the things that I was grateful for on occasion, and this is thanks to Bree to a certain extent, is that the focus needs to be on the need, not on geography. Now, I know that there are geographic concerns, especially when we're talking about the problems of expanding broadband in rural Minnesota, but the core concern is who is in need. We know that people in rural neighborhoods are in greater need to a certain extent, but the focus needs to be on the need first, and on that sense of access. We wouldn't be having conversation. I mean, there's also a conceptual thing I think we need to do, is to actually really start thinking about broadband access as a fundamental utility and not as a privilege. We would not be dithering or questioning how much we spend if we were talking about having running water in North Minneapolis or in Hibbing. We wouldn't be pausing on that. We wouldn't be thinking how big the check is going to be. We would just take care of it. And I'd like to see that kind of larger conceptual frame change to say, like, look, there are people in need. We need to provide this access to them as efficiently as we can. And one of the challenges goes back to, I think, something that Dave was talking about too, is that government can't do that alone. We have to find ways for the state to support equitable access to broadband through partnerships with private industry, because we can't do it just on our own. And finding ways to facilitate those relationships and let people help each other, which I think is really the core of what government's supposed to do, is help people help each other. Finding ways to do that with limited resources and with competing interests is extremely challenging. But so is running water. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. If you don't, the community of your entire health, the health of your entire community is jeopardized. If one area of the community doesn't have water, the rest of the community is going to struggle because of that. The same thing is true about broadband, is if we don't give broadband to everybody, those inequities will be perpetuated deliberately, not incidentally, but deliberately. They'll become harder to remedy. That's, I 100% appreciate the question. Thank you.
Okay, other comments? And before we turn to the subgroups, since Dave went there, he was talking about what butter have to do with broadband. I'll give you kind of just a funny, there's a lot actually there. So a lot of dairy producers today are starting to, well, we talked about finding labor to be able to put the wrapper on top of the butter, right? I mean, like standing manually, and that's, who wants to do that going forward, right? So that's going to be automated. Nobody likes to put wrappers. Nobody likes to milk the cows either. Like that's another area. So a lot of dairy producers are putting in robotic milkers and cameras to be able to monitor the movement of the cows, which all that absolutely needs broadband for that to work. And then from a processor standpoint, we collect the milk that they produce. And one fun anecdote is that most of the butter is made, like sold in this fourth quarter, Thanksgiving and Christmas. I mean, 60% of Land O'Lakes business happens in the next 4 months. However, the cows milk 3 times a day, 365 days out of the year. So part of the challenge any dairy cooperative faces is how do you manage sort of the milk coming in and where do you put it, and knowing how much is produced at what point in time when, needs a connection to that dairy producer, which could be anywhere in rural Minnesota, right? And so those are the things where broadband becomes fundamental to just things like having milk on the shelf, or having butter on the shelf, or cheese, or anything else like that. So I appreciate you looking at it, and then even having that ag and broadband together actually really goes hand in hand, beyond just getting someone internet at their household, which is very critical, but it's kind of fundamental to just how our whole state works, and it's really critical. So
No, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's essential. I mean, I visited close to 80 farms last year. I'm at 50 farms this year. And a lot of the small dairies I've gone to have talked about the challenge of competing with other dairies that have access to technology that they don't have.
that's right.
As the labor pool dwindles, the need for investment in new technologies has increased. And so one of the things, don't tell Tori this if he's listening, one of the things that I want to do this session is to create a fund to help small and medium-sized dairies become more technologically prepared to compete. But that doesn't do any good if you don't have broadband. So understanding how those two things work together is really important, because you got small dairies who, if they upgrade their parlors, would be able to compete with the bigger dairies much more efficient, and medium-sized too. So that is something that I'm already working on. I've been talking with MDA about this for the last couple of weeks, is how do we set up some kind of a fund to facilitate technological innovation in agriculture? That has to happen with you guys at the table.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the comments and all the work you're doing. I think it's critical for us. And again, we'd be more than happy to meet with you right before the legislative session, and then even during, if you have questions and want to have access to some of the experts. I think we have a good representation here on the task force that can help with that. So, okay. So moving on, let's.
If I could just,
was there a question?
This is Eni. If I could just make one comment, I would just
go ahead.
say that, broadband connectivity in the agriculture space in general needs a lot of support. I definitely think that it's important in the dairy industry, but also basically if you're growing any kind of crop on a commercial level. And then I also wanted to see if you were doing any work around eliminating monopolies in service as a way to make sure that more people in every area of our state are able to get access to broadband.
So the first half of that, I absolutely 100% appreciate your concern about making sure that we're focused on technological innovation in every area of agriculture. We are absolutely 100% on that front. We do feel like there's a particular crisis in Minnesota dairy right now, or has been for the past couple of years. So I'm trying to be targeted in my approach to that. Not to say that I'm indifferent toward the need for technological innovation for corn and soy, friends, and especially actually for smaller farms and organic farms. That need is there too. So I guess I would say that I'm looking at targeted interventions in different industries. This year I'm talking a lot about dairy, but we'll probably talk about some other stuff too. Now, in terms of monopolies, there are things we're doing in the agriculture sector that are pro-democratization. I like to say pro-democratization rather than anti-monopoly, although I think that those both kind of the same sort of thing. I know that that's an area that is most likely we're going to fall in the commerce jurisdiction or under the Attorney General's jurisdiction, but it's still something that I'm open to talking about. And this is also partially my way of saying I don't know a whole lot about consolidation in some of the service providers. I need to learn more. So if you want to talk to me more about it, I'd love to chat with you about it. But at this point, that seems like something that might overlap into other areas, or there might already be work going on in those other areas that I'm not familiar with. So yeah, I'm just saying, I'd love to chat with you a little bit more about that so that I can understand a little bit better. Maybe there is something we can do within my jurisdiction, or maybe it's something that I can help with in the Commerce Department too.
Thank you.
Sure.
Annie. Okay. Senator Westrom, if you're on, did you want to make a few comments, or not sure if you're still on or not? Can always come back to that. Okay, So let's move on with the agenda. The next piece is really to do a kind of a report out from the subgroups if you've had a chance to meet. So Anna might need your help to see if the team has had a chance to meet since the last discussion we had with the task force. The first subgroup is the affordability and digital equity. So would somebody want to give an update on the discussion you had in the last meeting?
I suppose. we talked about affordability and the ACP program winding down. It's now starting to affect people. Alex says.
Yeah, your mic's on now.
I'm back.
Okay. All right, Senator Westrom, did you want to have a few comments? I can give you a few minutes if you'd like to make some comments to the task force.
Yeah, no, real briefly, thanks Senator Putnam for your comments as well, and to you at the broadband work group on all of your efforts. Broadband is very important in our state and certainly here in rural Minnesota. So welcome. One area that's come up to me recently with constituents is kind of the one-off pilot project that we've been setting up, and so I'd be interested in just any feedback on how that is working. And I particularly have a constituent that just raised that issue to me in the last couple of weeks at a meeting that I was at, and I said, "Well, it's funny you ask because we've tried to start targeting those one-off places that are close to broadband that's been put in around them, but not." And so, where are things with that those types of constituents, or haven't we really gotten that started? I know we had talked about the pilot project. If somebody's close to it but didn't get included in a broadband project, how do we start adding them in?
I think what you're talking about is the line extension program. With capital projects dollars, we had 15 million allocated to that program. That is a self-registering program, so residents across the state can go on, self-register, and they're put in the system. We have had 3 rounds so far with only 2 awards. We are currently in round 3 of the application process, so it goes out for reverse bid. So basically then providers can decide whether they would like to bid on a location, an individual home that is within proximity of fiber, that makes a business case for them to extend that service to the actual home and homeowner or business. I will just say grant round, or round 3 of this line extension, we had over $13 million in asks. I believe after round 1 and 2, we have about 6 million left. Is that around, Diane? I think about 6 million left to fund. And with that 13 million is a little over 1,600 people in sort of that bidding process. So still working through that round 3, but as you can see, a huge number of interest there. And I think as we move into the BEAD process, this program is going to be really essential because we do know with BEAD, there will be folks that are served by unlicensed fixed wireless or satellite, and this program is going to need to fill in those gaps as a long-term solution or a short-term fix to be in that for all under the BEAD program. Does that answer your question, Senator?
It does, but it was a good excuse to get an update on the line extension program as well. But I know we've talked about that, Bree, and if your office could send my office the information of what to give the constituent of how to go ahead, that'd be helpful, and maybe a good reminder for all of us as we run into those issues. But it's not in Dave's territory, Dave, just so you know, but it's down in the Benson area. So I thought it's a good point, but it's nice to hear because it's exactly what we've been trying to surgically do with this program, and providers have largely built out a lot of easier areas to get to, and we know that some of the areas left are the tougher ones to get to. And so I think Chair Putnam and myself have common ideas to try to get this all done for our state. So.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Any questions or comments for the senator? All right, appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. You can ask him. More to come. More to come. Brian, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
It's okay. So we talked about, the fallout of the ACP and how it's affected the businesses, how many customers have lost, and what the alternatives are. There's Lifeline. If there's going to be something a little more robust in the future, like perhaps people a little more than $9 a month. So that's pretty much what we talked about.
Okay, so that may be a recommendation coming forward around ACP funding is no longer available. So what are we going to do, particularly for the state? Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for that update.
If I could chime in as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Eni again. We also discussed some of the challenges around hiring and getting approved to do broadband work. So, for example, the process to get a low voltage license to be able to pull the cable for the broadband, how the process can be onerous and unclear to businesses that are wanting to be able to do that, and how we were concerned that the lack of transparency could lead to that business going to out-of-state companies, where their certification process is a little bit more defined and clear. We also talked about our concern about preparing the workforce for this influx of broadband dollars, as far as the people who would actually be building and pulling the wire and doing the digging and doing the updates and upgrades to provide that middle mile, making sure that Minnesota businesses have staff that are qualified, trained, and certified to be able to do this work. And then also about some of the concerns around like insurance availability and bonding, again, for these organizations and businesses that want to be in the broadband telecom industry. So we were wondering if there can be some kind of guide or additional training provided to staff in those offices, or some kind of outreach program for businesses in that industry or who want to move into that industry to be able to handle the demand.
Okay. That captured. Thank you, Eni.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, the question regarding the exemption on licensing and the low voltage. To get some clarification from Department of Labor. I don't know specifically, so subgroup, if I missed what you were asking, let us know and we can go back to DLI and get more clarification.
Questions or comments for the subgroup?
Well, yeah, we just wanted to make sure that there was a clear and concise way to obtain the licensures required to do the work. And we also, wanted some kind of guidance on what the best practices are for hiring, training, retaining that type of staff. Maybe a list of apprenticeship programs that we can partner with, or again, best practices for starting one. Those types of things were the things we had questions about.
Got it. Okay, if there are no other questions, we move on to the next subgroup, which is the economic opportunity and workforce. Anna, did they get a chance to meet, do you know? Yep, okay. So
I'm gonna defer to Adam if he's there.
I am here. You're in the room if you want to do the economic development portion, and I'll knock out the.
That's what I get for coming up. Yeah, no. Adam, I'll cover some things. You can fill in the blanks because I'm sure I'll leave some. So we're the Economic Opportunity and Workforce Development group, which kind of segues into what Innie was just talking about and some of the things, workforce issues and so on. So we're looking at a couple of different things. We've talked about challenges in the area of, first of all, economic impact challenges in that there's just not a lot of data out there about it. And we think that while there is some, there's some national data being collected about the impact of broadband, on communities and both rural and urban in different situations, since the Blandon Foundation for a long time was doing a lot of rural broadband development work, and there was, a lot of qualitative data that they gathered, and we have access to some of that, not as much quantitative data, but we were looking at that from a standpoint of, obviously we feel like there's a strong economic impact, and again, nationally that's kind of shown, but it would be nice, and maybe that would be helpful to legislators to have some of that some more data in that area to say, this is what's happening once a community gets broadband, once this group of people get broadband. So we're looking at that and examining that and looking at other recommendations around some data gathering activities in the area of economic impact. And then, of course, workforce challenges and concern about the BEAD program and how many additional workers are going to be needed nationwide, how's that going to impact us locally, and that being a challenge and something that we want to look at, and in terms of growing the workforce, so those are all challenges and potential areas of recommendations that we are, and I know that Anna has helped us gather a lot of data. We're going to digest that before our next meeting and then really kind of hit where we think we can do some recommendations in those two kind of specific areas. Tab? Sorry, yes, absolutely.
DEED doesn't produce any kind of data on the workforce consequences of expansion of broadband.
They do workforce. They gather some data workforce-wise, the economic impact on the community and on.
They don't do anything on that.
We have not been able to know.
No, we did reach out to Center for Rural Policy
Yes.
To find out, and they have done assessments in the past, but not more recently, so that might be, and I know it's funded for that as well, but there hasn't been, we collect workforce data and have a lot of the general impact on.
I'm actually working with DEED right now to do some kind of mental study on the consequences of artificial intelligence. Very well to understand economic development. But it seems like that's putting the cart before the horse.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody's.
Yeah. Other questions or Adam?
Just adding on to that, if we can help with data, we'd be happy to. So from PCs for People, we've had about 44,000 households across the state on our internet, and they do an annual assessment, self-reported, but what's your income, how many kids are you employed? And we found the income goes up by 15% in the first year after receiving our services. And we've looked nationally, we've never drilled into Minnesota. So we could look and see if that same national. You'll hear a lot more when I present later, but just wanted to make sure that offer was there. We can help.
Adam, you want to add anything?
I think you covered it pretty good. Sorry, I got to turn my camera off. The lag is so bad, it was losing me in and out. So I would say, Mark, you covered it great. I think one thing to highlight is just the worry of the BEAD deployment timeline affecting greatly the workforce capabilities of the state, and seeing how many out-of-state contractors are doing the work today, maybe just in general, not specifically grant funded necessarily, but the worry that is going to greatly be impacted by the BEAD dollars on a national level, and just trying to make sure we're ready on a state level to face that need. So appreciate you taking that on, Mark. Appreciate it.
Oh, good point, Adam. Thanks for adding that. Any other questions?
No, I think on the not going to solutions, but something for the subgroup to think about is, as there's going to be more need for workforce when BEAD dollars arrive, is there a way to highlight, that this is an area you can get reskilling, right? Because the labor challenge is going to be there, but how do you highlight this is a great place to create a career over the next few years? And Adam, when we were at the Luna site last time, he showed us lots of interesting things around, things that certifications and things like that. That could be a good way to entice someone to say, hey, this is maybe something I should consider doing. And that may be something we highlight. So.
No, I agree. Side subject in that discussion, we had talked about finding models of different group collaborations to get folks in the industry, to kind of get people into the workforce. And CWA, Communications Workers of America, they have a great partnership in an apprenticeship. I want to say it's the splicing aspect of the work with CTC, so a telco and a union. We thought that might be an interesting topic. Maybe their apprenticeship person or someone can highlight how that program's working, or maybe goals that they've set and done.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments for this subgroup? All right, moving on into the last subgroup update, mapping, funding, and policy.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Steve.
Hey. So our subgroup has met. It looks like my camera's lagging, so I'm turning it off. You guys still hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. All right. So we tried to identify the challenges, and we tried to come up with some recommendations. The challenges kind of center on 4 right now. Current state, first one being current state speed goals may not be a reflection of what's being done. I think the industry has largely kind of self-adopted the higher standards than what's in the statute. And so the statute is a little behind for what they're already installing. Another challenge, continuing funding for state programs like line extension and border to border during BEAD funding. It's just a concern that these could get forgotten, left behind. Because there is BEAD funding available, they may not be getting the attention. And there's still valuable programs. So it's trying to make sure there's funding there. How to ensure and recruit workforce to support current and future broadband deployment needs. This kind of follows the conversation we had this morning about workforce already, and has come up in several meetings. Last, community planning efforts around building capacity. So with those, I'd say we have 4 recommendations down. I think we've actually missed one. First, funding. Again, with BEAD, it should be something that maybe that's not seeming to be a priority this year. But funding makes everything work here, so I think this task force still has to talk about it and think about it and put it into the reports and consider where some of these programs fall short. Border to border is great, but there was desire for the line extension to pick up places where it wasn't getting. It's that same kind of situation. We have to see where they're not quite fulfilling the need and then see what we can do with that. Consider increasing statutory speed goals to reflect the technological progress. This would take a policy change, so it would take some legislative action. My suggestion, and I don't think it's been any suggestion to go higher than what the industry is doing, but it's to recognize what they already are adopting and what OBD is directing money towards when they do grant funding. So it's just a recognition of what's already happening, put that into law. 2 recommendations around policy and funding for state programs. Separate funding from policy. These are and should be 2 different discussions. We can continue with funding and what we have. Policy is more of a aspirational or it could be good, but the funding really is a key part of this. Maybe present menu of options for legislators. What could they do with different things without harming the current programs? Identify limitations where programs could be supplemented. 3, workforce and broadband deployment. And the 4th one, I think, actually kind of follows this. It's listed as a separate one in our list, but maybe state allocation of funds for Lead for America Fellows. We had some presentation on this. It sounds like it's been very useful to some of those communities. It's a piece of the workforce. It's not the installer exactly, but it's helping communities build out and helping the success. So this one is more of an example. There's the broad statement of supply workforce and encourage it. A more specific example is, well, what if we put funding into something like Lead for America Fellows, where locals could get grant funding for that. That is, I think, the best summary of our most recent meeting. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. That's great. Comments from other subgroup members or questions for the subgroup? And we can see that there's some overlap, but that's all together. We make sure we don't have that, and they'll be all together. Maybe augment each other. So, but that's good progress. And again, in October we'll starting to craft a draft of the report. So I think the challenge and recommendations are crystallizing, which is great. Okay, so we're running just a tad behind, but I'm pretty sure we can catch up with some buffer later. Without any more delays, maybe the next topic is PCs for people. So I will turn it over to you, Casey. So.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here. My name is Casey Sorensen, CEO at PCs for People. And the title here of what we do is Sustainable Digital Equity. And curiosity, show of hands, has anyone not heard of PCs for People? Two. All right, perfect. Everyone else? Yeah. And I realize you guys are well versed, even if you haven't heard of us, in the issue of digital equity. But I'd like to start with a primer on this issue to give it a little bit of personal context. So I want everyone in the room and online to think for a minute. What year did you send your first email? And who in the room has the oldest, or online has the oldest year? 1988.
That's gonna win. That's totally gonna win. You shouldn't. 87 or 88, probably about that same time.
The internet guy should have been over there. I did this in DC once, and someone on ARPANET was in the room. He said 69, I sent the first email. But the point of bringing this up is the personal context that you've been sending emails for decades, and everyone in the room has. And we think, oh, another email is email. But now imagine you never sent that first email, and you never sent an email ever. Where do you work? What's your job? And that's the issue that we work on every day. It's that digital inclusion issue. So here to tell you a little bit about that, a little bit about my story and what we've done in the state of Minnesota. So my story goes back to, gosh, this picture really screams the 80s. I appreciate being here in rural Minnesota and the ag talk because I grew up in rural Montana. So go west from Minot, right across the border in Montana, and that's where I grew up. Low-income family, and my mom, as a secretary at the local schools, told my dad, there's something with technology. Let's get a computer for the kids. My dad said, how much is it? Mom said, $2,400. My dad said, do you know what we can buy on the farm for $2,400? No. So she saved up for a full year and got that computer and the DOS for Dummies book that I'm holding. And I was hooked. I found my 4th grade journal recently when I went home, and I wrote in that journal, I will work in technology when I grow up. And that never wavered. I ended up going to school in Mankato and was looking for an internship and learned about a county program refurbishing and distributing computers in Mankato, Minnesota. And ended up volunteering for 3 years. And it was an eye-opening kind of aha moment for me that the opportunity that this gave me and the trajectory in life this computer put me on, I got to give out several hundred computers while going to college and have that same opportunity for the other 9-year-old boys and girls in Mankato. When I graduated, I went on to the corporate world and was working for Deloitte in IT, flying every Monday, back every Friday. And one day thought, what if I take my technical skills that I've learned in college and working for Deloitte and apply them to this social concept? So about 16 years ago, I quit my job with Deloitte and launched PCs for People. We had 400 computers, and I thought I'd be set. 400 is a lot. But they were gone in 2 weeks. And in 2 months, we had a 1,200 family waiting list. So demand had far outrun our supply, and I quickly realized this wasn't going to be the small volunteer-run nonprofit that I participated in during college. I had to rewrite our business plan into a 4-step model that it is today: source, refurbish, distribute, and support technology. The first and most important step is sourcing. When we first launched, we had asked for donations of computers. So we called the Fortune 500 and we got 20 or 30 computers. That was great, but that Fortune 500 recycles thousands of computers every year. And we needed to figure out how to unlock those thousands. The solution was to get certified for data wiping, certified for recycling, get trucks, get warehouse staff. And now we deliver a valuable free service to over 6,000 companies across the U.S. And we do want to make sure it's a valuable service, taking everything, not just the good stuff, but everything. So this hang of less support, if it looks like the headache behind your desk, is actually some commodity revenue. So we're able to take all of those pieces and parts and components and generate just a little bit of commodity revenue that'll help fund our model. Nationally, now we process more than 6 million pounds of e-waste every year. This is great for the environment, but it's also a workforce development opportunity. Each one of our locations selects a workforce development component to supplement our core mission. In Ohio, we work with reentry populations. In Denver, troubled youth. And Minnesota follows my personal passion for removing barriers for people on the autism spectrum. Inside our warehouses, we set up a computer factory where we refurbish items like desktops, laptops, tablets, and phones. They're returned to like new condition, and they're high quality because the source is enterprise-grade technology. Computers get a new copy of Windows 11 installed, and they're redistributed at a fraction of the cost you can find elsewhere. We're also one of 12 U.S. companies designated as a Microsoft authorized refurbisher, and the only nonprofit with that designation. The core of our program is to get tech into homes, and we distribute through 4 main channels: retail, bulk partnerships, events, and online. This is our St. Paul retail location, which is set up as a non-traditional retail, one-on-one like a social worker, where we guide recipients to the technology they need. The first step is proof of eligibility, which is 200% of the federal poverty level. The average recipient is a family of 3 living on about $18,000 per year. Once proof is shown, someone's eligible for our services, which include computers, internet, repairs, and training. Since cost is the primary factor why people don't own a computer or adopt internet at home, our program is designed to be retail at a price point people can afford. In store, computers start at $3 and go up to $150. We found if you can remove that cost barrier and gain local trust, people of all ages will adopt technology. My oversimplification of a productive member of our modern society is food, shelter, computer. Meet the basic needs, computer and internet can unlock the rest. 58% of people who come to our program are unemployed. That's a staggering number that shows the importance of digital skills. One of my favorite stories to reinforce that, a gentleman came in with his laptop and said, "This has transformed my life. I want you to wipe it clean because I'm going to give it to my daughter." And I said, "This laptop has transformed your life. How?" "It's a tool. What happened?" And he said, "I knew I always had the skills to get a job, but I lacked the access. I'd go to the library. Library's great, but 1 hour time limit. I applied for 1 job every day. And after months of doing this, I found about your program. I got your computer, I got your internet, and I applied for 18 jobs every single day. And within 3 weeks, I had a job as an adjunct professor at the local community college teaching math." And he said, "So now my daughter is going to get this laptop, be her first ever computer because I got one through work." And it's those sort of stories of why we exist. Another cool thing, we've been doing this for 16 years. About 8 years in, we looked at the Twin Cities metro area, and we found it took us 8 years, but half of the entire eligible metro had come to our little storefront to get our services. And that's a pretty powerful thing to me to think that the 9-year-olds like from my story that are entering the workforce, what changed? What happened after getting that computer 8 years and now entering the workforce? And I cited the stat earlier that a family receiving our services, the income goes up by 15%, So for every 5,000 connections, that's an $8 million aggregate increase in income for those who need it most. Mentioned we distribute through multiple means. Pictured here is a large-scale school event where we do events up to 400 families can come. We can make sure everyone in that school has a home computer. When the pandemic hit, our events transitioned to COVID curbside safe, a lot of times in partnership with food distribution. So this picture here, when cars showed up, left line was food, right line was computer, or both. So people would come through and get a computer and food. A home computer doesn't add a lot of value without internet. Internet doesn't add a lot of value without a device. So we partner with ISPs to distribute computers to low-cost customers. And we also match our customers to our unlimited mobile internet. And in some of our markets, we're building last-mile networks, fiber to MDUs, as well as rural and urban 5G builds. And the picture on the bottom right is a build that we have in Mankato to distribute $15 a month wireless internet. When providing a tool to families that have never owned it before, support is extremely important. We're effectively the help desk today for over 300,000 active computers across the U.S. On our busiest day, we receive 1,800 phone calls and offer support in English, Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. We also do traditional classroom-style training from digital literacy to 8+ to financial literacy. And we deliver ongoing training and support to not only get, but keep working tech in homes. All computers come with a 1-year warranty, and we offer ongoing $25 repairs, even if someone didn't get a computer from us. When I do this slide, I like to do a special call out to our customer service team, because if you've ever received or given a support call to family or friends, you get a little bit of an idea of what 1,800 phone calls are in a day. We were successful launching in Minnesota. In 2016, we wanted to see if our model could be replicated. We're now working on scale. With each new location, our capacity grows. We can serve larger companies, get more tech, and more people. Our goal is to both collect and distribute tech in at least a 4-hour driving circle around each location. So we now have offices in 9 major metros across the U.S., and we recently set an internal record placing 650 computers in 1 day. The result of our fortunate model is over 500,000 people connected in all 50 states across the U.S. This is a computer distribution heat map. And when we overlaid it with a heat map of poverty, I was amazed that poverty matched almost exactly to our computer distribution map. So our computers are touching almost every pocket of poverty across our country. You can also see a bright area in Minnesota from the Twin Cities south through Austin and north through International Falls. Over the last 16 years, our trucks have crisscrossed the state collecting and distributing computers. In Minnesota, we've distributed over 90,000 computers and 44,000 internet connections. That translates into impacting 122,000 kids. And that's one of the reasons why I love what we do at PCs for People. As I mentioned, for each 9-year-old, what happens in their life? What changes after receiving a computer and internet connection at home? It's a really exciting time in digital equity. I'm sure the task force here is aware of the NTIA funds and a due date that was yesterday. So it's been a busy time for everyone in our industry over the last month. We got our application in. We're part of about 12 different applications across the U.S., including multiple here in Minnesota. We've recently connected with the Minnesota State University system and learned that 15,000 laptops are needed to eliminate the digital divide for state college students across Minnesota. And so we're now actively working on growing our supply to tackle that huge issue as well as other large statewide issues. Because still from the data that we have, in 2024, I pulled it yesterday, 40% of the people that get a computer from us still this year have never owned a computer in their home before. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to come and talk today. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah.
You're talking about the NTIA competitive grant, which is different than the capacity grant that our office is how it's going. So I'm happy to hear, and I know we've been in contact, but just for clarification, with NTI right now in digital equity.
Hopefully it's okay to say I heard that the desire for more funding for Minnesota was there than versus what came in. So hopefully some of our applications as well as others can bring more resources to the city.
Casey, we really appreciate the presentation and the work that PCs for People is doing. I think it's a tremendous effort. Questions for PCs for People? Anyone online or anybody in the room? I'll begin one. I have one question. You said what was the cost for PC? I know it ranged from, there was a range there, right?
In the store, anyone for retail, and cost starts at $3.
Okay.
It goes up to $150.
Okay. Is that depending on the type of computer and then their
Get a desktop for free, and then the newest laptop that we have available is $150.
Got it. Okay.
You see how that.
We do it at $15 a month. So we have two different ways. We do mobile hotspots on the T-Mobile network. So anyone who can get a T-Mobile signal can get a hotspot at $15 a month. And then we build some of our own last mile networks, like in Mankato and in a few areas of Minneapolis. People can get on our own last mile internet.
Where does the funding come from to do this good work?
We try to be self-sustainable. And so when we collect everything from companies, we're doing data center decommissions, we're taking servers, we're taking network switches, the cables in the picture, and we can wholesale and remarket those, and that'll help provide some of the funding. And then we try to be efficient in what we do, that the computers are coming in from companies, we're doing a data wiping service. So operationally, we try to be really efficient and average about $70 per computer distributed, because the same number choose free as choose 150, and we try to make ends meet at $70. And over the last 16 years, we've gotten pretty good at doing that.
And as a company, data wiping is a thing you need. I mean, like when the lease is up, I mean, you need to get wiped with everything on it, and so that's actually a service you pay for. So
Yeah, we're a little bit like the trash guys for technology. And also, you mentioned Landon. Landon was one of our first grants that we received that was large scale for rural Minnesota. So I said crisscrossing the state. Landon funded a lot of that, and computer distribution statewide.
But thank you for all the work that you guys do. And thank you for some of that data. I'll be in touch to get any more of that data that we can use.
okay. Any questions from online? Not seeing any other questions, Casey. Thank you so much for that update. That was great. We really appreciate that. Okay, so let's do this. I think it's time for a break. It's 11:25, so we're right on schedule. Let's pick back up at 11:35, and our next presenter will get set up. Thank you.
That's one bad.